These are 10 big changes happening right now in the short-term rental industry that will completely redefine Airbnb and VRBO in 2026. The first thing that you need to know is regulations. The EU has passed new laws effective May 2026 that are forcing platforms to share their data. This is leading to mandatory registration of listings and the potential of automatic deletion of listings that do not comply with local regulations. In the USA this year, the FTC passed anti-junk fee laws and transparency laws that has forced Airbnb to switch to an all-fees upfront pricing style. Airbnb's done a good job of making this look like it's something that they decided to do, but secretly, the simplified pricing changes that you're seeing as a host is because the FTC has put pressure on Airbnb. This detail is important because what we're seeing is a global trend, how regulations and governmental policy is being enforced at the platform level. And even platforms are upping their game on their own personal enforcements, like Airbnb's off-platform policy, to try to keep their guests and hosts doing all of their business on the platform to prevent direct bookings or under-the-table monies exchange. Now, this all does sound threatening, but there are some opportunities here. The increased regulations in markets will lower supply. Anytime where it's harder to launch a short-term rental, it's easier to stay in the industry because the lower supply leads to higher profitability. These regulations can also increase trust between Airbnb guests and hosts and Airbnb, the platform, and local policymakers. Many of the regulations that exist in this market are because hotel lobbyists have told a story to cities to cause cities to ban or restrict or regulate Airbnbs. And these global policy changes can change the optics of the entire industry, causing major cities to relax some of their regulations, which we have already seen so far in the past. Detroit had banned Airbnb and reversed it. Dallas restricted Airbnb and has chosen not to enforce it. Philadelphia wanted to completely ban Airbnb and switch to a zoning-based regulation. With the higher trust that comes from regulation changes, hosts will get a little bit more leash in some of these major cities. And that's a positive. And speaking of, the second major change that we're seeing in this industry is the platform's attempt to repair trust between guests and the platforms. Hotels went to war against Airbnb after the Airbnb bust. The Airbnb bust was a consequence of supply growth, where a lot of operators came in because the money was easy and they had no intention of supplying good product. Hotels were able to take advantage of this absence of quality to start to change their value offering to tell people that consistency and trust and efficiency was something that you can always get from a business like a hotel. Really leaning into Airbnb, including with their ad campaigns. And since the Airbnb bust is a couple years removed, this message is losing its signal. It's giving the major platforms like VRBO and Airbnb a chance to win back these customers from hotels, to make a new promise to guests through platform changes and trust signals like guest favorites. Superhost is all but dead to the badge you get as a host once every quarter. It means nothing for the performance of the listing anymore. So much so that you can no longer even search for Superhost when you're traveling. Your option now is the guest's favorite badge. This was a strategic shift that Airbnb made to distill trust down to the listing level, where one host can have 6 great properties and a bad one, and the bad one will not get a performance boost through the Superhost badge. Each individual listing is now judged on its merits alone. And many hosts hate this change. It's inertia. Change isn't welcome in business. But for the hosts that are paying attention, this is a massive opportunity. To have 1 or 3 listings that are all doing great allows you to compete against these massive companies that might be hiding behind a Superhost badge, giving artificial boost to dozens of listings in your market. This can no longer happen. This type of change is bad for big operators and great for the little guy. I expect to see in 2026 that trust will be the keyword for any channel that represents inventory. I even anticipate to see the growth of companies that create a trust market space where hosts can advertise that they're trustworthy through a third-party verification marketplace. And beyond that, companies that curate the best and most trustworthy listings into portfolios, where travelers can find the best listings in the world off of platforms like Airbnb or VRBO, where the one key element of that curation is trust. And the third change that you need to know about is the entire industry, both short-term rentals and hotels, are arriving at an equilibrium that has not been seen since the COVID boom. We are finally achieving occupancy stabilization back to pre-pandemic levels. Now, the data is mixed. Over the last year, we are seeing slowed supply growth, which was expected because of the Airbnb bust narrative, where investors are saying, get out of the space, do not join short-term rentals. And we are seeing relatively larger demand growth compared to supply growth because of these trust initiatives and new platforms pulling guests into the space. And meanwhile, we are seeing hotels downgrade their outlooks for 2026, which means they are losing the war against short-term rentals. This does mean that 2026 may be an optimistic year, where operators that have survived the multiple years of the Airbnb bust get to benefit from the fruits of their durability. Less supply and more guests. That's great for us here in the short-term rental space. Major change number 4 is a side effect of the Airbnb bust. There has been an increase of operational maturity in the space. The hosts that have survived have done so by improving their business models. Listings are better than they've ever been before. Photos tend to do a better job of signaling what a guest wants to see. Operational costs are down. More companies are employing their own housekeepers at a lower rate than using third-party agencies that have been railroading hosts with high cleaning fees. More operators know how to use pricing softwares than ever before. Adoption for pricing softwares is over 70%. The amount of operators on multiple channels has grown exponentially year over year. And this has all been in response to rate compression that has happened over the last couple of years. What this does mean is that for younger operators, there's a higher bar to clear to get to competitive competency. Even though there will be less competition, the competition that remains is good, which means it will be harder to be a top 1% listing than it was last year or the year before. Under the assumption that good listings get booked first and bad listings get booked last, we may see less people fail, but we will still see that the bottom doesn't do very well relative to the rest of the industry. This means for you that continued education and active management of your portfolios will be essential, and utilizations of softwares like channel managers or pricing softwares are becoming more standard and required for success. As markets of hosts reach 70% or 80% saturation of having Price Labs or Wheelhouse or Guestie's Price Optimizer in that market, pricing softwares no longer find breakout opportunities to beat your neighbors, but they become required in order to keep up with the rest of the market. By not changing your prices effectively, you could be one of the only listings not booked instead of one of the few listings booked at the best prices. Softwares are now required to be in the room, to be level 1. And beyond that, your active management of your portfolio, you'll be making what I call level 2 changes to your pricing strategy, knowing what everybody else is doing in level 1. For this, I need to remind you that my new book, The Revenue Manager's Handbook, is coming out very soon. There's going to be a link down below or in the corners where you can pre-register for this book and learn everything there is to know about revenue management, so you can actively manage better than your competition, maximize your revenues, and if we ever see a market change like the Airbnb bust ever again, you can be one of the few operators skilled enough to navigate that down cycle. So click the link, get the book, and be the best in your market at revenue. Major change number 5 that you need to be aware of is the shift in channel and discovery dynamics for operators. For example, in the EU again, Google is coming under fire under the Digital Markets Act for a bias in the way that they print out listings in search. Google is being forced to make a change to better represent all listings in the vacation rental space. This has caused major traffic swings for EU listings that are found on Google, and we should expect to see continued volatility in the space. And globally, discovery is becoming more fragmented. Airbnb is under 50% market share. VRBO is at 22% in the USA. Booking.com has grown 17% over year, and other channels like WimStay have grown over 400% year over year. There are marketing dollars being spent in this space by these new channels to try to capture market share that people believe Airbnb has lost through this lack of trust. It's going to be a close horse race because Airbnb has won back a lot of trust with their initiative changes. The question is it too late for Airbnb to recover most of their share? Will a significant amount of their market share go to companies like WimStay or Hopper, VRBO, Booking.com, Trip.com, Travel Station, Marriott Homes and Villas? The amount of hosts and guests that know the names of these channels has grown exponentially since last year, and that awareness alone is a threat to Airbnb. Further, for new hosts or new listings, we must be aware that Airbnb has abandoned the new listing boost. Your new listings will no longer get a boost that Airbnb used to use to determine if your listing was trustworthy. Airbnb instead is giving all listings a neutral score. In highly competitive markets where the bell curve is more to the positive, a neutral listing will show up lower in the algorithm by default. In markets with a lower bell curve of trust, new listings will show up higher in the algorithm by default. It's important for us to understand as operators where we land on the trust ladder in a market. A market full of wonderful Airbnb listings, we will need to do some outbound activity to try to find a way to get somebody to our Airbnb listing to get them to book and then to give us 5-star reviews so we can build that trust. This is the first time in my history as an operator or as a coach in 11 years that I am telling some of my students to push artificial traffic to an Airbnb listing to prime the listing. But at the same time, in other markets, we need to do nothing to boost our listing, to get it booked initially. And all of our direct marketing initiatives from day one can focus on just getting us direct bookings absent of Airbnb's fees. This absolutely changes market to market. And this is something that we can pull in our research phase. We can determine inside the Airbnb platform how competitive a market is and devise a launch plan that works per market. Those of you with experience in this space know that I advise not using a software, not AirDNA, not Mash Advisor, no one currently to do market research except for on Airbnb. And for those of you new to this, the reason why is Airbnb has a proprietary algorithm that serves listings at the very, very top. It does not matter if we can determine if a listing makes $80,000 a year or $200,000 per year if we do not know why. And any external software that gives you data on what properties make what amount of money cannot tell you how that listing interfaces with the algorithms that they're distributed on. But on Airbnb, we interface with the algorithm directly when we do our research. We can see the influence of the algorithm on listings based on their features and their prices and what a guest searches for. If you ever want to have the best listing on the planet, you have to ask Airbnb what the definition of the best listing is. And AirDNA and MatchAdvisor can't give you that yet. And if you want to learn these market research strategies, there will be a link down below to talk to my team to find out how. But in summary for number 5, the decentralization of search, where boutique sites are popping up and there's more direct bookings and guests are understanding that channel distribution is a thing, we should be more explorative on where we list. We should list in anticipation of bookings even where there are none. Because if you can be one of the very few operators on a channel and bookings start to come in, you'll have position on those bookings and you will make the money. Bonus for you is you can type in any website, trip.com, booking.com, Marriott Homes and Villas, and you can search on those platforms per market. And you can find out if there's listings in a market and if those listings have reviews. And this is not obvious, but something you will notice is if there are listings and they have reviews, that means that this channel is getting bookings in a market. So if you're trying to find channels that will make you money, search on every channel in your market and find listings with a presence of reviews. Or find one that has no listings in your market and you can be the first one there. This can help you save some time on the channels that you choose to distribute on. Major change number 6 may be the most important of them all. It's the evolution of the buyer. We've talked about this lightly so far. Guests are surprisingly more savvy than they've ever been. If you like to read, there's a book called Instabrain. It talks about the change of Generation Z and how they interface with the internet compared to people like myself, who are definitely not Generation Z. Younger adults, ones born with a tablet in their hand, are much better at pattern recognition and are much better at pulling nuances out of photo and video. Studies have shown even recently that these younger adults have a part of their brain that more intuitively senses if something has been created by AI. It's getting harder and harder to fool people online with bad product masquerading as good product. The threat here for hosts is it's much easier to lose a sale. There can be things that will knock a customer out of your funnel. There will be non-starters for guests or not so obvious icks that will knock somebody off of your page or off of your listing because you showed something that you should not have or you did not show something that you should have. If you're new here, we talk about this stuff all of the time. Concepts like right fitting or perception of effort, for example. There's an hour-long coaching video just a couple of videos back on this channel where I worked with 2 hosts from Tennessee from the top of their listing down to the bottom, everything that they should consider to change based on the psychology of a buyer and what they would like or would not like in the home. And even 1 hour of content cannot teach you everything on this topic, but it's a great place to start. I highly recommend watching that video after this one. The best takeaway for you here is to understand what type of customer you serve and what they are hoping to see. We want to focus on excitement and clarity in the photos. The more clarity that we can give, the more trust that we can build. And the more excitement that we can leverage, the less trust that we need. Show people that you're thoughtful, show people that you're prepared, and show people that you care, and you will get all of the bookings. And if you're a real estate investor, let me just warn you, be careful in this space. The days of putting an expensive property into the short-term rental space and printing money because it's a nice house are gone. These overly sterile and empty properties that have no personality, very globo gym, shiny and clean, they don't connect with people anymore. If a listing does not vibe with the guest, you will not get the booking. And people are so fed up with rich people's properties where they don't get any service anymore. This is a major shift in the requirement of guest desire for short-term rentals, as people have realized that what they really want from an Airbnb listing isn't just a house, they want the host as well. Major change number 7 is kind of exciting. There are some cautions here, but mostly exciting. 2026, there will be the World Cup. There will be over 100 matches of soccer between the United States and Mexico that will drive so much business into these cities that there will be so much supply constraint that people can 10x their prices very often. It is 100 days of Taylor Swift concerts and Super Bowls, essentially. But all events are not created equal. Other events have given us a signal that people are being more discerning with their money. For example, here in Dallas, the State Fair had 16% drop in attendance versus last year. Around 400,000 less people showed up to the State Fair this year. The major reason is they cited pricing concerns. This does not mean people are not spending money on travel, but they're changing their priorities on how they're spending money because they are far more cost conscious, because this economy is not that great for the little guy. Stock market and investments may be at all-time highs, but this is an illusion of strength in the economy, and we're seeing people in the bottom half of the income ladder really struggling with their expenses. The amount of money families have in savings accounts is at a critical low. Credit card defaults and card defaults are increasing. What we do not have is financial stability here in the United States. And not just in the United States. Currencies are down in relation to the dollar globally. From Canada to Argentina, we are seeing a decline in currency values. This will also change where people travel. Canadians and Argentinians, because of this change in currency value, can't so easily come to the United States. It's just more expensive. And people in the USA may travel internationally more because this could be one of the prime opportunities to take advantage of these currency exchanges. This may mean that hosts in the USA may need to change their appeal for travelers, such as leaning into workforce housing or insurance housing, relocation housing. Recreational travel patterns will likely change. And with financial uncertainty comes shorter lead times for bookings. So what you may find also is that you will still win the bookings, you'll just win the bookings at a shorter lead time. Now, all things being equal, you could get the same daily rates. But in a peer-to-peer on-demand industry like Airbnb and short-term rentals, if hosts spook and drop their rates, then you must consider the change of their rates into your pricing plan when people do start booking. There is an intersection of quality and price that we always must be mindful of versus our competition. I recommend making a wish list of your very near neighbors of competition and find out how they are behaving with their prices. It may mean that you're required to drop your rates last minute to achieve bookings competitive versus them. Otherwise, your market may be sleepy and not drop their rates, and that means that even shorter lead times won't lead to less money for you. This is a case-by-case basis. Major change number 8 that you need to be aware of is the headwinds of the real estate market and the fact that they're likely not going away. Interest rates are going to stay high, according to Fed projections. And home sales are not improving. There are still way more sellers than buyers. We may see real estate prices continue to come down as builders are also trying to sell off their inventory and are more willing to cut rates to clear their debt, leading to a domino effect of lower values but higher interest rates, may be causing homeowners to go upside down on their mortgages. Now, this could lead to a positive way down the road, near the end of 2026, depending on how people potentially default on their properties. Going into the first quarter of 2026, there is a big advantage for arbitrage in our space. There has been an overbuild of multifamily in major cities. There was an over-optimistic projection of growth met by financial headwinds, people consolidating where they live, and now apartments sit empty. These multifamily owners are more willing to play ball in the short-term rental space, give rent concessions and lower market rents in order to fill up so they can clear their debts as well. Construction loans can get expensive for these builders and they need to hit target occupancies. So my advisement for you is grow through arbitrage into the first quarter of 2026 and really hold these commercial properties feet to the fire to get the best rates you can get, and keep your dry powder ready for the third and fourth quarter of 2026, because if it all continues to hit the fan long enough and people go upside down on their mortgages, we could find ourselves with some properties in the value bin by the end of the year. And a bonus footnote I have for you that are interested, I'm not an expert in this space, But there's a chance that lower supply and materials cost can cause homeowners to be able to build at a more competitive rate going into 2026, meaning these new homes will be cheaper priced than the older homes that were just built, further compressing the rates where these older homes might have to drop their rates to compete with builders' new wave of supply. I think that's correct, but this is one of those things that maybe we should clarify in the comments if any of you are experts in that area. And thanks in advance, by the way. Major change number 9 that you need to be aware of can get really high level. It's the relationship of tech stack, pricing softwares, platform algorithms, and what that means for operators and how they navigate their portfolios with something called game theory. To simplify this, imagine a game of rock, paper, scissors. And for the last few years, hosts have learned that throwing rock makes the most money. And if you wanted to beat these hosts that throw rock, what would you do? You'd start throwing paper. The truth is that changes in customer needs, changes in customer archetypes, changes in travel patterns, changes in price sensitivity, all of these mean that the game constantly changes. And even though throwing rock worked for the last few years, rock won't be the winner next year. I'm pretty sure of it. Over the course of this video, we've talked about the potential for increased volatility in markets because of currency changes and regulatory changes and, of course, customer archetype changes. Your biggest advantage in 2026 is to pay attention to the non-obvious data. Changes in lead time, changes in what we call hit rate, whether weekdays book or weekends book, changes in length of stay, changes in projections given by your pricing softwares. And through that data, what you're looking for is the customer. Can you find a customer that other people are not looking for? You might be able to identify that you very commonly have a Wednesday check-in. Wednesday's the day that people like to check in, and you can modify your entire rate plan to optimize for the likelihood of a Wednesday check-in, which means that your Tuesdays are going to be trash all of the time. Tuesdays will be the worst day of your week. And knowing this and adjusting for this where every other host doesn't look at the nuance in their data, you can outperform your entire market. And in slow season, where there's not enough customers for everybody, you can identify the highest value customer archetype and market to them a year in advance to try to win the best possible bookings by aligning yourself with the perfect customer all year round. You're always on sale for the right customer. While hosts are running a default strategy all year round every year, you can call that the zig. You will choose to zag whenever it's in your favor. This concept of game theory, doing the less intuitive option, the less popular option, and capturing the added value of that option only because it's less done, will be a key part of the way that you run your business versus your competition at any time of the year where there's not enough customers for everyone. Game theory also applies in the reverse, when there's way too many customers for demand and you want to maximize your revenue during the World Cup or summer season. You can once again play against the mistakes that every host is making and make more money than the rest of them. We talk about this at length, even for free here on the YouTube channel, so go back and watch my pricing strategy videos to start to understand how we can deviate in markets slow and peak, so that way you can make the most money and get the most occupancy. One of my other tips for you in this case is to get more data. You can plug in to PriceLabs and Wheelhouse and all these other softwares and get access to their data without paying them to change your prices. I use Guesty GPO to run all of my pricing on the back end. There'll be a link down below for Guesty if you're interested, but then I also look at PriceLabs data because I like the way that PriceLabs visualizes their data. I will take what I learned from PriceLabs, what I take from my Airbnb wish lists, and what I take from GPO, and make a final decision based on whether or not these three agree or disagree in prices and projections. Pricing theory is a game of incomplete information, much like a game of poker. And the more data that we can get, the more likely we will make the right decisions at the end of the day. Increase your tech stack. Add more channels of distribution, add more free softwares that give you access to data, and track your competition through these channels, creating wish lists, and constantly conduct searches for key dates that you want data for. The best way to get data very frequently is to act like a consumer and shop your competition live on a channel. Become much more active here in the way that you collect data and monitor your competition, because more and more hosts are relying passively on their tech stack to make all of their decisions for them, which means all of these hosts are settling in to a permanent equilibrium that is actually imbalanced They're all throwing rock because their softwares keep saying rock is the best idea. But those softwares are running on feedback loops of massive amounts of data. It takes time for those softwares to change and say, maybe we should throw scissors now. But you actively looking at this data will see the changes before the softwares can see the changes, and you'll capture the market before anybody else can. So in summary, your softwares aren't telling you what to do, your softwares are telling you what everyone else is doing. And run from there. Major change number 10 that you need to be aware of is one that I am still a student of. I'm still learning this every day. And it is currently the biggest conversation in cracking Super Roast on my live calls right now, which is branding and positioning on social media. This is the bluest of blue oceans in our industry as we speak. Many companies are multi-channel. Many companies are using pricing softwares. Many companies have good photos and good marketing on the channels, but very few companies understand the life cycle of discovery from a social media post to the mid-funnel where you get consideration for a booking from a stranger that found you on Instagram to the bottom of funnel where somebody books you directly on your website because they saw an Instagram post. Through social media channels in my mentorship, we are testing different types of assets, and we are building ways to track the performance of these assets from top of funnel to booking conversion to determine not only what type of social media posts will make the most money, but what type of other organic marketing initiatives through SEO or blog marketing might also print money. To understand how our portfolios can show up in unique and compelling ways. To discover what kind of unique keyword combinations we can create in our social medias and through SEO to be discovered when someone has high search intent to stay somewhere. We want to get discovered for cheap or for free, to not burn out an ad budget on discovery. So that way we can maximize our revenues on channels that aren't Airbnb or VRBO. In meaningful ways that can build a forever business in the short-term rental space, no matter what channels or platforms do, no matter what regulations say, no matter what our competitors do, if we can create blue ocean markets through social media or branding, we will always have access to customers at a price that we determine. And getting direct bookings will always have immediate value capture, because Airbnb is charging 15.5%. Booking.com is charging 18%. Versus 18% of inefficiency, there's not an industry on the planet where the winner pays the extra 18%. That is a huge advantage. So if we can get 20% of our bookings for free instead of with an 18% fee, that is a gigantic lever for bottom of line net revenue. This, my friends, was the 10. Let me know what you think down below in the comments. Reminder, watch this video next. It'll make you a better host. And as always, I'll see you on the other side.